I'm hoping that our panel today are really going to give us some insight, particularly into how young people can shape our democracy beyond the polling booth. We've got an incredible panel here. I'll just quickly introduce them, starting on my far left with Siphelele Chirwa. She's the CEO of Activate Change Drivers, which is a network of over 4,500 young people around the country who've all stood up to make a difference in their communities and in their organizations and are connected as a network across the country. It's really an astonishing group of people. Sorry, this is a little bit floating around, but so I'm turning 40 next week, and I still struggle to let go of the idea that I'm young. So everyone here has at least worked with young people, even if we are not young anymore ourselves. So Spesh has 17 years of experience working with young people, particularly in leadership development, rites of passage work, and particularly in wilderness work, which is really wonderful. Next to Spesh, we've got Jess Dewhurst. Jess is the CEO and founder of Justice Desk Africa, which is an organization that works predominantly in schools to fight for the human rights of everyone across Africa. I think you're in 10 countries now, is that right? 10 countries across the continent. And since its establishment in 2013, it's impacted the lives of over 2 million people. I think Jess is really someone who's powered by the idea that it is your everyday person who has the power to make change. And you really show that in your work. Next to Jess, we've got Sandile Tshabalala, who is the co-founder of Huruma Bantfu, which is a company committed to co-creating the conditions for human-centered upliftment and optimized outcomes for its clients and their communities. It works on socioeconomic opportunities and works predominantly with collaboration to cultivate social capital through intercultural insights. Sandile is a Tutu leader for humanity, which we're incredibly proud of, and if anyone would like to learn more about that program and possibly apply to join us next year, please speak to Jakob or any of the team. But Sandile also had a particular role in this election in that he was the chief of staff for Rise Mzansi. And we're not electioneering anymore, so the outcome is clear, the seats have been allocated, but there was a very particular strategy around getting young people involved in politics that I'd love to explore that they took forward. And then our final panelist, Inam Qoma, is the co-owner and CEO of Rothko Brand Partners, which is a strategic communications firm that works predominantly with social impact organizations, particularly in the education space. And so I'm really hoping Inam can bring to us a particular flavor for the popular culture and the sense of young people online, online and out there. So each of you has a really interesting particular lens on the state of young people, on working with young people through different perspectives in South Africa. And I guess I'm wondering, as we kick off, maybe if I can just hear from each of you, how are you feeling after the election? And what's your sense of where we are as young people moving forward in this democracy? Maybe Spesh, I'll start with you.
Sure, thanks, Janet, and thanks for the invite. How am I feeling? Oh, it's a good question. I feel alive, and I'm happy to be part of this process and to be part of South Africa today. We have worked very hard as an organization to get young people to the polls, to get them to vote. I think the last 2 weeks have been, I've been imagining a lot of things, and one of the biggest prayers is that the talks of coalition have been coming up a lot, but the biggest coalition that I've been praying for is a people-centered coalition. It has been a prayer of peace and a prayer of just waking up post-Friday and waking up to a South Africa that has been done through politics and the political structure, to wake up to a South Africa that really, really wakes up for people. That's what I've been praying for. And how I wake up and how I feel is that proud of the young people. I've been listening and talking to people post the elections, and we haven't congratulated enough the first-time voters in South Africa. I imagine how they feel today, knowing that this is where we are finding ourselves as a country, and they had a role to play. I've been meeting and talking to them, and I'm like, for you to wake up on that day and go and vote as a first-time voter, gives me that hope, Janet, and gives South Africa hope that young people are doing something. So just in a place of, I feel like someone will wake me up, but proud.
We had a check-in last week, and Olwetu said it was her first time voting, and what an experience that was. So yeah, what an exciting thing for us to feel for young voters. Jess, how are you feeling?
I'm so excited. I'm very excited. Very similar feelings. I feel like young people have had their say in this election, definitely. And something that really inspired me in particular was children's involvement in the election. If you're under 18, you can't vote. And a lot of the time in this country, children are not given the respect that they deserve, and their voices and opinions are not really listened to. And that's because of a variety of things. Our structures as a country are not set up to make sure that youth can actively participate. But also culture, religion, there's many things within our society that prevent children from being listened to. But I love that didn't hold children down at this election. We had children going out and sharing information about voting, sharing information about parties, even though they themselves knew they couldn't vote. But they were going out there and saying to people, vote with me in mind, vote with young people. And I love that. It got me so excited because I think sometimes people wait till they're 18 to kind of go, okay, now let me get involved. And I think that that's not the case in South Africa. I think young people are saying, if I live in this country, if I have to experience this country, I'm going to have a say, and I'm not going to wait till I'm 18. So I love that. So also very proud, very excited, and let's hope on Friday some incredible things happen, which focuses on the people and what the people need. Not so much what parties need, but what the people need.
Thanks, Jess. Sandile, you had a particularly interesting election, I'm sure, and you must be coming down off quite a high. But I'd love to hear from you, just sort of from all of your different lenses, how you're feeling about our democracy at the moment and what we can do.
Yeah, I think I feel very disappointed, to be honest with you. I'm disappointed not because I was involved with a political party, in a particular party, and really driving a lot of their campaign strategies or efforts, but I'm disappointed at the way in which young people are once again not going to be led by other young people. I think there was an opportunity for this country to have leaders that were going to be presented in leadership structures or governance structures that were going to be young and really drive a new vision and a new trajectory for the country. But that's not the case. I think we've yet again voted people that have no idea of where South Africa needs to go, that are back in the governance structures. And I think the next 5 years are going to be hard, extremely hard for a South Africa that hasn't yet found its soul, a South Africa that is fighting with each other. The fact that we've got a party that has quite a significant number of leaders who are not willing to go to the first sitting is already a sign that the next 5 years are going to be hard. Hard to pass laws, hard to deliver services, hard to hold other people accountable. So I think we've missed an opportunity. And I think for me, I'm really disheartened because I worked with leaders that were extremely, extremely qualified, extremely committed, had worked hard to make plans. There was a lot of resonance among certain political parties. I can mention Rise Mzansi, I can mention Build One South Africa. There was a level of youthfulness that was there that we all resonated to, but unfortunately that's efforts lost. And let's not celebrate 2 people going amongst 80 people or 100 people. It doesn't really make much of a difference. So I think we've got much more work to do. But for me, the next 5 years are going to be extremely hard for South Africans, especially young people.
It's a sobering perspective. Thank you. Inam, from your perspective, how are you feeling? Where do you think we are?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling a bit more optimistic. I think mainly because young people have really been communicating about politics and about their needs and about social change and the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis, way more than usual, at least from my perspective. I'm a youth, so I can still say we are okay. We are okay.
It's me. I'm over here. It's okay.
We're good. Young people are good. we're good. I think the optimism comes from feeling that our voices are heard. Yes, we could have shown up better in the polls, and we could have, stayed longer in the queues and been more patient and rallied more people to join important causes. But I think we compared to 2019 or the years before, I feel like more young people are more engaged. There's always that whole sense of young people are despondent. They don't want to get involved in politics. They think politics sucks. I mean, it's pretty boring, but it's our daily lives. And I feel like more and more young people, I mean, even if they're dancing challenges on TikTok, at least they're getting, they're part of the conversation. They're not tuning out, they're more tuned in. And I feel like it's a start towards the right direction. There's so much more to do, as Sandile has said, but I'm excited that the conversations are happening, which I feel like 5 years from now, it will double. But then there's also that other side of communication where it's like, is it the right conversations that are happening though? Is it the good, the factual conversations, or is it just, trigger fingers that are not really doing much? But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it holds.
Yeah, I think there's that interesting what's the online world and the offline world, and to what extent do they speak to each other? But I'd love to come back, Spesh, to you. I mean, so we've talked a little bit about voting as one way in which young people can participate in democracy. But we've got now another 5 years. I mean, we've got local government elections that'll come up, but we've got 5 years where we don't get to vote, where we have to use every other tool in our toolbox to participate in democracy. And how are you seeing young people do that? You're working across the country. What do you think are really powerful examples of young people working for democracy beyond the ballot box?
So I'll take it back before the elections, right? The youth empathy conversation that has been going on and what we've seen. And I think if we look at where we're going and where young people are beyond election, and if we speak about beyond elections, we have to speak about, I always have fascinating conversation with young people about, so now that you voted, what do you think is going to happen, and what is your expectation? And they always speak about the power that it's given to politics itself as a political structure, that those are the people that carries the power to change South Africa. And that narrative needs to change in what we say and how we convey with young people to say, but within your street committee, within your community, you have so much power beyond just having to go and sit behind a cardboard box and put an X. So what am I doing in holding account, and what is accountability beyond voting? I always say, to put it in simple way for young people is to say, when you vote for someone, it's like you're signing an employment contract and you are the employer, right? So if you are the employer, what does it mean in holding them accountable? What are the policies and the procedures that gets you to hold the people that you've put in power accountable? And they see themselves as an employer. It gives them a sense of, no, you are there because of what I need and what you can do for me. And it's not a two-way thing. You have to offer something because I've put you in power. So how do we take the power conversation to young people to understand that they carry some power beyond just going to vote on that day of elections? So how do we now take account and accountability to the people that we've put in power, and not be on social media, not be on what I've seen on the news, in my street committee, in my door, when I leave my house? Who is in charge of what needs to be held or needs to be held accountable? Oh, it's that person's face that is on my pole in my township every day. Where do I find that person? What are the structures? What are the information that we need to continue giving to young people to saying, for accountability, these are the structures and the ways to follow through? Because we're talking about education and we're talking about how to hold account, but if you ask any young person in South Africa, how do you hold people that you've put in power accountable? They will tell you, I'm going to remove them from their seat next elections. We have 5 years of so many things that we need to put together and work together as South Africa to make sure that they happen. So the education doesn't stop. The lobbying doesn't stop. The working together doesn't stop. On the day of elections is how we wake up the next day. So at the moment, we are all jittery for the last 2 weeks because of who's going to be in power. What are our plans on a human level, as neighbors? How are we working together to say, now that we voted, what are we doing? So it's continuous work. The work is doubled, if not tripled, post-election. So we don't say, now we've done our civic education, people have voted, now we fold our hands. We say, we double the power of saying, what do you do with your voice and how you are unheard, and how do we make you heard, knowing that you have the power as a young person. The power is with the young person, not the politicians, if you really look at it. And they've shown that in the last 2 weeks.
Thanks, Besh. Sandile, maybe just to come to you and the disappointment of where things are at. So I think you're right that there was this huge resonance with the idea of new leaders. And I'm really struck at the moment that you barely hear about a youth league anymore. There's no more youth leagues. There's political parties, and then there's political parties with young people. But as you say, the elections didn't pan out in the way that perhaps you'd hoped and many other young people had hoped. And so what is it you do now, post that election, to really continue to do the work of getting those young people into leadership?
I think that's definitely the challenge that we have now is the appropriate methods or the appropriate ways in which young people can be given the tools they need, first of all, to make better decisions, but second of all, to understand the impact that voting has on their future. I think a lot of the people that voted and most of the young people that went out to vote, I think did vote from a place of not being informed properly. I think they voted based on popular belief or collective views around populist ways of politics, right? But that doesn't necessarily spell out that a manifesto doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to deliver the way that party is saying. There's a lot of changes that happen along the way. And I think a big part of that is obviously civic education around voting is important. But I think more young people need to be interested in actually joining politics properly. And I think a good example of that is that, so if you look at Rise Mzansi, we do have a new leader, Songeza, who's actually going to parliament for the first time. But the second leader has been in parliament before the DA. And of course, also, if you look at Bosa, Musa Mamane has been to parliament before. So the notion of new leaders is there, but it's not really there. If you look at the MK party, a lot of the leaders going to parliament from AK are ANC disappointed people from the ANC who broke away. And if you look at the ANC itself, there's people going there who have already been before, so they're going back to parliament. So the question is, at what point do you get people in these governance structures who have a new vision for the country, who are actually going to go there and question critical policies and laws that are no longer relevant to this current condition we found ourselves as a country? So I think for me, there's a lot of education that needs to be done amongst how young people take their power, like that you spoke about, around how they relate to politics, right? But at the same time, there's also a young person that we're not fully understanding as suburban young people. I just came back from KZN. I've been working with a few young people in rural KZN. And a KZN young person is very quick to follow what other people are doing in terms of politics, but also very quick to also have apathy if there's apathy in the community, but also very quick to join whatever mobilizing is or organizing is going on. So if you come and do a career fair, all of the participants will come young people because that's what everyone is doing. But if there's also violence, they also young people can, and as we saw with the July unrest. So I think moments like that, let's not cancel them. I think young people may show a different kind of organizing in this country. I think there might be an organizing where young people show us that they're not happy. And that may not look like waiting for the next election. It may look like this current establishment needs to be dealt with. And I think that's fair. And I think that's fair. And I think for me that's fair because a typical young person in South Africa doesn't have the human rights or the dignity or the kind of constitutional enjoyment that some other young people enjoy. And I think for me, it's really sad that there's still high levels of unemployment in this country. There's still a lot of young people that have to go into drugs and alcohol. There's still a lot of young people who have no sense of belonging to South Africa. You're right? And I think for me, there's a lot of work that needs to be done through partnerships and collaborations to really change that perception of a young person, to say you can believe in South Africa again, you can hope for South Africa again. And I think this course is one of the biggest outputs that could guide that moment in which young people can relook at themselves and maybe create a pathway that kind of overlooks the current establishment. Because my disappointment is that we are going to be led by people who are not young. And I don't know who they're leading.
Yeah, I'm conscious listening to you that even in the manifestos, which is sort of the grand promises of all of the parties, not a single party promised to make enough jobs just for the new entrants of young people that are going to enter the labor market each year. So, 2 million jobs there's 700,000 young people every year that enter the labor market. And so if you're going to, over 5 years, create enough jobs for all of them and the 6 million people who already are unemployed, you need much, much more ambitious targets. And I'm really conscious that it's interesting that in our manifestos, in our big promises, we weren't even that ambitious to meet what young people really need in society today. Jess, you're working with children, with young people before they are sort of fully fledged citizens with the vote. How do you get them interested in this work of accountability and human rights?
To be honest, we don't have to work that hard. Young people are angry. Young people know that they are treated like kids. And I don't mean that in a positive way. I mean that young people are really looked down in our country. And can I also say, as a youth, I hope, also by youth. You were talking about, youth leagues and things, but children aren't allowed to participate in that. We talk about children's parliaments, but when's the last time you've heard anything about the children's parliament? We talk about, all these, I don't want to name specific names, but there's all these, associations and groups that are supposed to be there representing young people, but young people don't just arrive when they're 18. I also think that our structures are not suited for the actual demographics and the people in our country. A lot of the time when people talk about, getting the voice of children, they're talking about Model C schools. They're talking about getting information there. What about the children who aren't in schools? Which, by the way, there are a lot of. All the children who leave school in grade 9. These are young people whose voices are never really heard. And I think young people are angry. They're not just angry at government. I think they're angry at the country for not speaking up enough for young people, and even just asking young people what their thoughts are. So I think, when it comes to the children in our various programs, they are very excited and to participate, because I think they feel like they've been denied that opportunity. We live in a country where we have incredible role models, and we talk about, our legacy of being activists, but we don't create opportunities for everyone to be activists in this country. There's a very particular type of person that we want to be activists, and other people who try, we kind of push them down. And I think that that's a problem. We need to start looking, like you said, we need to start dismantling these systems that we have in place, many which are heavily influenced by colonial structures, which don't suit our country, which don't suit our continent, and are not taking the opinions, the thoughts, the ideas of young people seriously. And until we start to see every single citizen in South Africa as someone who's important, who has an opinion and should be listened to, as long as we can't do that, we're not going to move forward at all. So it's about how can we create new, innovative ways of working together, of listening to each other, of participating. Once we start having those kind of conversations, then I think things will start to change. In this election, I think it was really exciting that young people were getting involved in trying to encourage others to vote for things they're passionate about. But I did also find it quite disappointing that most of the under 18s knew way more about what was in those manifestos than most people who went to vote. And that's disappointing, because we have a responsibility to vote with those citizens in mind. So I think that is something that we need to take more seriously. When we cast our vote, it isn't just for us. It's not just for you as an individual. There are so many people in this country who, yes, it's our right to vote, but also, some people, even with that right, never get to access it. We need to be voting with our country as a whole and our future as a country in mind. We tend to vote based on who we don't want in power, and who we like, who we don't like. It's very rare that you'll hear conversations, but this is what we need to do as a country. This is the part that I will play in our common mission to create a free, peaceful, incredible country. So I think we're still very in our pockets, and I think we're forcing children to be in theirs, but I think their patience is running very thin. And I think that's why they just join things and they jump out, because they're tired of being pushed in that corner. So I think you're going to see a lot more children engaging in democratic structures, pushing for their participation in those structures, but also holding people accountable. Like you say, going to even ward council meetings, or even, a lot of young people, when they show up, they're told, leave. You don't know what you're talking about, you're a young person. We're starting to hear big no's. And that's a bit controversial in some communities, but I think it's actually quite incredible. Because if we're not going to stand up for the kids, they'll stand up for themselves. So I hope we see more people wanting to be involved in all aspects of society, and like you said, not just every 5 years, but every day, because it's every single day we need to make sure that that manifesto becomes a reality. All these promises, so many jobs, so many this, so many that, that we hold people accountable to make sure it does become a reality. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, the big no coming from young people. You know, I mean, Jess spoke a little bit about sort of new ways of communicating, of having these kinds of conversations. In the media world, you're sort of on the cutting edge of how we can participate in new ways. What do you think young people can do in the next 5 years to really step up our influence over our democracy?
I think over the past, I mean, you were speaking about attention span, just young people are not patient anymore with what is happening in our, current situation. And I think just looking at in the media space itself, nobody's reading long articles, nobody's reading those very long manifestos. The media has, already started chopping them up, making interesting videos, reels. We've seen, for example, the Daily Maverick, they even had like it highlights, storyboard that is dedicated to summarizing some of the key highlights of manifestos. And people that are engaged in social media already, young people that are very much present in those spaces, are beginning to get those quick access stuff, because before you'd have to go to a party's website or go to a council meeting in order to get the manifesto. Like, people did not know the manifesto. You'd see people, even those that are elected to parliament, reading their manifesto the first time on days they get sworn in. But I think young people are getting more educated in that sense, because they are more in touch with what is happening, based on being involved in their communities. And communities, it's not just the spaces they live in, but online. So I think a lot of what I'm seeing that is happening is young people are taking to their online communities and sharing their frustrations, how disgruntled they are, but they're also sharing what is happening. There's a lot of citizen journalism. I mean, before it used to be oh, look at you with the phone, shooting what's happening. Now it's people engaging about not just their opinions, but telling people what is happening on their streets, what is happening in their homes, so that it's not all glamorous. It's no longer about, oh, look at me living this sweet life, but it's like, look how difficult things are. Like, we're speaking about the Western Cape is amazingly governed, but you're telling a story of two Western Capes. Like, which Twitter are you on, really? Which hashtag are you using about Cape Town or about the Western Cape, about South Africa? So we have different perspectives of what we're seeing. But if we're looking at all young people and, the frustrations, the unemployment, the GBV, and, even the quality of education in some places, people are frustrated. And the only way is to get people to talk about their frustrations and to get people more active in communicating what those frustrations are. And I think social media has been the space where people are doing that, but it doesn't necessarily translate into votes, as the Red Party would, admit. But we're not here to talk about that specifically. But what I'm liking is seeing a lot of institutions, like there's this institution called the Center for Behavioral Economics, that literally is looking at what's happening in the social media space. They're tracking what is fake news, what is real news, what people are talking about. They've been tracking political party engagement on social media and seeing who is actually really posting versus who is sharing a lot of misinformation and fake news and things like that. So there's things that are happening in media that are enabling people to get more informed, and people are not necessarily going to mainstream media. Years before, you would be on SABC from the morning until the evening just watching election news. Now we have a variety of channels, and not just mainstream news. We have amazing podcasters, local podcasters. There's one that just grew tremendously in the last couple of months that I've been in tune in, because they are not apolitical. They don't choose a side. They're trying to be fair. The Sizwe Mbofu Welsh Experience podcast, which is a youthful platform, and the political analysis that happens there is quite amazing, more so than what I've been seeing on some of our mainstream news channels. So I feel like young people are taking ownership and using resources to communicate and have access to information. I'd like to see more of that, and I'd like to see more young people tell their stories, be active in shaping the narrative of what actually is happening, as opposed to waiting for this top-down approach of being told what to say, what to do, how to act like.
Thanks, Inam. I'm conscious that we can have a conversation, so I'm going to open up to the floor. Maybe I'll ask Jakob if you could man the mic. Oh, we've got another mic there. If anyone has any particular questions for the panel, or if you've got a particular reflection on how young people can really spend the next 5 years strengthening our democracy, please do just pop up your hand, and we'll make sure we come to you. Okay, I'll let you think. I'm putting you on the spot. But what's interesting just listening to all of you is it feels like there's a gulf between what's happening in young spaces and then government over here. And I guess I'm trying to figure out what bridges that divide. How do we figure out the bridging between the gap of young people are active, they're telling their stories, they're connecting, they're trying to make change. And then there's this thing over here called government that has the budget and has the policies and determines major aspects of our lives. And in between, there seems to be a gap. What do you think we can do? I mean, how do we bridge that gap for young people? Mostly in the past, it's been protest. We've seen, we're one of the protest capitals of the world. Not necessarily a bad way of doing things, but it hasn't necessarily yielded the results I think young people would like. Sandile, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I think for me as an entrepreneur as well, I think it's quite important to say that, we try to wake up each morning and create solutions, right? We try to provide services that big business can buy, or we try to make partnerships that other people can feel that we can work in an ecosystem with a common goal and a common purpose, right? But what you find is that there's such a fear of a young, talented person in this country. And I don't know why. There's such a scary... I mean, I've been in spaces, in rooms and in convenings where the more you talk the truth as a young person, the more everyone kind of doesn't like you. And I think that we as young people are becoming a threat to this idea of government, of power. And I think that's why I'm becoming more and more uncomfortable about where this is leading. Because I think young people are becoming more and more understanding of their power. And what they do with that has nothing to do with who's going to control that agenda or that narrative. I think young people are going to own this country. And it may not look like an election, because it will mean that the structures, the systems that are perpetuated across all this language delivery doesn't resonate to what young people need. Young people need income. Young people need to wake up each morning and go do something. Young people need to have homes and live and start families and live dignified lives. How many young people have that experience? In this country, that's not a lot. And I think the systems that we have really do need to be questioned, because they don't create those possibilities. And I think it's so unfair that even now, it's June 16 this weekend. Parliament is being sworn, hopefully, this Friday. And the moment in which this is happening, those two events, that it's a matter of hours or days in which these two realities happen, is quite significant. It's quite spiritual in a way, because you have a memory, a commemoration of a day where young people said, "We're tired." And then you also have it just before that this year, we have a new system which doesn't make sense to anybody. We don't know this government of national unity, what it means. We don't know who's talking to who. We don't even trust the people who are talking to each other. And I think we're not being honest about where we're headed. And I think for me, it boils down to the most important solution is giving young people food. It's giving young people opportunities, and it's giving young people dignity. And I think that for me is urgent. And I don't think we are yet as urgent. I think we are hopeful, which is great. We're optimistic, which is great. But this situation is urgent.
It's a real clarion call that you've got there. Jess?
Just to add to that, I agree with you completely, and I think To be totally honest, I don't think, I haven't met a single government structure that actually cares about young people, to be totally honest. Because if they did, systems would have already been changed and put in place. I think young people, the reason why I'm excited is because I honestly felt so depressed going into these elections, and I think a lot of young people did. And a lot of young people have given up on trying to engage because they're like, what's the point? Because, like you say, I think older generations look at young people and either doubt tremendously what they are capable of, think, okay, you don't know what you're talking about yet, or, like you say, are afraid of young people and what we could do if we had control of the country. And so I don't think that there has been genuine efforts to actually get young people involved in politics, but also just leadership in general, like you're talking about your community leadership. And I think that's the reason why social media has blown up. We're sick and tired of trying to access systems that are not meant for us, actually that are set up to keep us out. And then, so obviously we're going to find other systems or create other systems in order to express ourselves. And like you say, I mean, we used to read newspapers. Now a genocide has been shown to us through social media. It's, those are the people who are actually telling us what's going on in this world. I saw the other day a TikTok where a young girl did a day in the life of someone who lives in a shack. And she showed from getting her water to this, to that. And the thing is, young people are forced. I mean, I love that we do it in such creative, awesome ways, but young people are forced to find other ways to engage. I'm excited that young people haven't given up completely on our systems that are in place, such as voting. I don't think they've completely given up, and that's why I was excited to see, for example, registration. There was a lot of young first-time voters that registered, and that made me very excited, because I don't know if this was my first time voting, I would have had to give some talking to myself before I went to go register. But I do think that if we are being totally honest, we need to see some very big changes in how our systems are structured. And if that doesn't happen, I don't think we can say that any of our parties or government structures care about young people at all.
Sure, deep. I've got some hands there, but Spesh, I'll let you speak quickly, and then I'll go to the back, and then here to the front.
So, with the question of the gap, the politics, the young people, the middle, and I keep hearing the last part of the video that we watched when the arch says, tomorrow will be beautiful. And it gives me the analogy that tomorrow means there's a time in between now and tomorrow for it to be beautiful. But how am I showing up today to enjoy tomorrow? And I'm not asking someone who's over 50, I'm sorry, that question, because your tomorrow is today, and let's be realistic, right? So this question is to be the question that's asked over and over again to young people, to saying, you have time. Tomorrow is 24 hours from today. What are you doing within that 24 hours to enjoy the beauty? Because some of us are not and will not enjoy the beauty of what the South Africa we've all dreamt about. Mm-hmm. So in that time that I have, in that 24 hours for tomorrow to be beautiful, what is my part? And my part is not, my mother always says, one finger points outside and the four are looking straight at you. What am I doing? What am I doing? How much of my power as a human, as a person, as a young black woman, as a mother, as a young person in a university that I've given away for someone to change my reality? And changing my reality is the structures that are always throwing the door in my face. And I'm always saying that's how it is. We have accepted so much that is not healthy for us to build the South Africa that we dreamed about. And we have to start having those true conversations individually and having those conversations with each other. I have 24 hours for my tomorrow to be beautiful. What am I doing today to make sure that South Africa becomes that beautiful place? And that's what I'm taking away from this today as I walk away from here, is to say, oh, he said tomorrow is beautiful. I'm holding on to that, but I know that my reality is saying it's dire. But I know that I have a part to play. But what is my part? And who have I given my power to feel this depressed? Because I played a role, guys. We played those roles in many ways. So I'm not here to give a motivational speech.
No, you're very good at it.
But beyond that, I said, I spoke about this to someone, and I always speak to people, and I said, I'm having this conversation, and I say to myself at the Desmond Tutu Foundation, and they said, oh, that's another word, you know, those people have given us so much gifts. And I've always said one of the biggest gifts that when I come here and when I go to the exhibition is allowing and hearing the Arch tell me about his mistakes that I shouldn't do today as a young person in South Africa. What does this parliament on Friday tell me on what to do tomorrow? So my tomorrow is also situated in some of the old lessons that we keep repeating as young people ourselves. If I go and find a platform, it's for me on my own and myself. And nobody else is going to come to enjoy this fruit because I found it. We're becoming selfish. We're not, the Ubuntu word is becoming something else. So I think it's a reflection. We don't reflect as a country. We move on to the next thing. What's next? What's popping? 24 hours, guys. What is my part? As a young person, what is it that I'm doing today to find the beauty? Because I don't want to pass on without even having a glimpse of it.
Thanks, Beth. Let's go to the back. If you can just give your name and then chime in.
Hi, I'm Mbali. I was actually a part of the curating of this series, so it's really exciting to see it come to fruition. As a young person, I think it's been really interesting to try and hear at least people in part speaking, not necessarily on behalf of our generation, but from actually delving into it and communicating. While running the risk, obviously, of sounding like a devil's advocate, I think because apartheid was 30 years ago, we're an infant of a democracy. And I think something that isn't necessarily being dealt with is the fact that a lot of the people who are voting still remember the actual foresight of like getting evicted out of your house. And the young people that you're speaking about too, me, myself included, have inherited the burdens of the previous generations that experienced apartheid. So I necessarily didn't believe that in the first general election that I voted in a few weeks ago was going to be some kind of like spearheaded moment of, you know, a new democracy. I think that that change is going to be slow. Yes, it's going to be hard, but it isn't necessarily demoralizing, or at least I am not demoralized. I also think that with the expectation of us achieving as much as we have, there's some kind of fixation, at least for South Africans, that solutions are finite, and that isn't the case, right? They're ever evolving because different issues come up all the time. Our contexts are going to keep changing. Our circumstances are going to keep changing. The TRC was a great idea in the 90s, and then people condemned it 10 years later, but that's because there were different issues 10 years later. Like, I don't think that to sit in a kind of position of hopelessness, or at least kind of like disheartenment is going to achieve anything, because as was affirmed by the panelists, young people are excited, we're very hopeful. I also know that in the abundant of votes that I'll still be able to do in the trajectory of me living in this country, a lot is going to change. There's going to be a lot of people like myself that are going to change it. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mbali.
Thanks.
I'm going to go to Wilma, and then I'll come here and there, and then we'll go back to the panel. First to Wilma.
Thanks. I'll try to be quick. It's a question both to the panel and to the young people in the room, because I'm definitely not young. So I'm in Amanus. I work with a youth leadership training program of unemployed youth in Mount Pleasant and Siphelele townships, which is amazingly transforming. And we worked hard with them to actually register, because half of them weren't going to register at all. This is a year ago, and we worked really hard. But the question is, do you think the next elections are not 5 years away? They're 2 years away. Yeah. Local government. And so my question is this an opportunity, in fact, a better opportunity, or an opportunity amongst a multi-pronged approach? I hear you, Sandile. You know, I hear your disappointment. I feel it too around young people. But I understand the structures are not created and don't have space for young people, and the older people haven't moved aside. I absolutely agree. It could and are the local elections a place where young people are sometimes better known in their communities and can go for it from now, like starting tomorrow in 24 hours, starting tomorrow on local elections, because they, I think, might be spaces. I was in Hopefield back in the day, but there was a 30-year-old mayor for the first time who was the ANC candidate, and so on and so on. Are there more spaces? Do you think that's a possibility, or are you saying there really isn't space for us? But I would hope there is some space with local elections.
Thanks, Wilma. Let's go in front here. Oh, there's another one there. Sorry, go for it.
Hi, my name is Siphelele Chirwa. So I'm a project coordinator for the Incarceration Nations Network. So we're a global network that works with formerly incarcerated individuals around the globe. So we've got 134 partners. But when we talk about the politics and the voting, I was never so confused about who to vote for when I woke up in that morning. Even though I was always sure about my party, but that morning I was so confused. And I started to question my vote. Will my vote make the change that is necessary for the transformation that we need in South Africa? You know, in South Africa, we tend to see so many political parties coming every year that are new. And we never really work out what is already existing and see how we can work together. The working together, it's not there. And each and every political party that comes, it always comes with new manifestos and so on. But I am hopeful, just like Tata Bishop Tutu have said, I am hopeful that if we as the people, not the political parties, we as the people, we can come together. It is the people that are able to change the trajectory of our country. It is not the political leaders that have outdated ideas. As my sister was saying, with the apartheid being in front, we're not voting from a point of punishment that we want power. We need to vote from a point of we want progress, you know, not just for ourselves, but for our country. So that is the progress that we need to see, that we see it from somebody else, or we see that progress among ourselves. I am hopeful that the country is going to be beautiful. But being beautiful, it means that it needs each and every one of us who's here to put their hand on the plow to work the ground. I am doing that. We promote higher learning in prisons. So the guys that are in prison, when they're coming outside, they are educated and they contribute very well in their communities. You know, we promote working in collaborations with other countries so that what works the other country we can see if it cannot work in our country. We've done a lot of collaborations, you know, with different people. I am hopeful that our country, it is going to reach a stage whereby it is successful. But the success that we need is not just economic success, but it's everyone living together as brothers and sisters. That's the kind of success that we are looking for. Thank you.
So I've got two last comments, one here and then one there.
Thank you. My name is Noxie. I am from Year Beyond. I have so much to say.
Can you
but
keep
I'll
it
short?
Keep it short.
So the past week I was in Nelspruit, Mpumalanga, where I'm originally from. And I remember when we were supposed to vote, I called my brother and asked him, did you vote? I knew that he registered because I forced him to register. And I was like, we're going to have the conversation of who you vote for after you have registered. And when I asked him, did you vote? He said no. And I was angry because I'm just like, you can vote for anyone, just do something. But when I was at home, I realized that I actually understand why he didn't vote. Because people at home, they're struggling. Here we're talking, on social media we can do these campaigns. People back at home, they need to choose if I'm going to buy data or I'm going to buy bread. And when you say, we're going to do marketing about this voting, really it's not marketing about voting, it's a party coming there promising people. I'm talking marketing of let us tell people what it means to vote, what is their responsibility, without mentioning any other party. Because what is happening in townships where we are from is that parties come and lie to people. And I am in the city, I have data, I have Wi-Fi, I have access to the knowledge, but the person back at home doesn't have that. The person back at home has to choose, am I gonna buy data or am I gonna buy bread? And when you look at the streets, people literally build their own speed humps because there is not what you call service delivery. And now you're coming back to them and say, you must vote. I think that is unfair. when we haven't given them the knowledge or the information that is just going to equip them to vote right. And I think talking social media and saying, oh, they must read and stuff like that, they don't have the means to get that information. So I think our responsibilities right now is to continue with the conversations and find a way on going to townships and really talk to young people, the 13-year-olds, because in 5 years, they're going to be 18. So we need to start having that conversation with them now and not wait when they are 18, actually.
Thanks, Maxine. Let's have the last comment here.
Thank you very much. My name is Jordan Peters. I'm a documentary filmmaker and writer and the co-founder of the Cape Youth Collective, CACO. I will say thank you very much for all the offerings shared. I was a bit skeptical coming here and at the start of this because I think that hope is a drug and we are addicted, you know, and I mean all respect to the Arch and, you know, everything that he is and was, but I often make the joke that I'm excited for the death of the Rainbow Nation because then we can actually start the work of building a real nation instead of this facade, you know, that we tell ourselves is here, stronger together, etc., etc. So I'm glad that the contributions have been based in the real world, you know, and not the world that we want. I just had two quick contributions, and the first is that I think that, you know, the good news is that there are a lot of young people who are already change makers in their communities, and I get to work with them, who are doing, I would say, the real work, the dirty work on the ground every day. Young teachers, young social workers, working in very difficult situations. And I think that what they need isn't necessarily more lessons or moralizing or even inspiration. What they need is practical resources. You know, I just had a conversation with a friend of mine. He's a new teacher in Delft, in a very difficult school, lots of violence, gang violence in the school. And he's 24 years old and he is struggling. He is hopeless at this point. He's only been teaching for a few months. He's scared of the learners in his class. And he tries to talk to older teachers, he tries to get support from the department, absolutely nothing. I actually have a friend from the Year Beyond program as well, struggling because she has to pay, well, the money's run out, right, for the program, and they're doing such important work, and there is no more money for transport and food for the learners who attend their programs. So I think that when we talk about empowering the youth and, you know, the youth must lead, the youth need practical resources to lead. And then the last point, very quickly, that I wanted to make is that I just also want to problematize this very homogeneous understanding of the youth. Who is the youth? Because young people, you know, because I think that also goes to tokenize young people, because young people are not the same. I mean, I disagree with things that have been said here about the TRC in particular, but, you know, there's also this rising right-wing wave across the world, and we know we're seeing it in Europe, in Asia, but also here in South Africa. Young people are not this progressive, you know, group of people who are gonna take the flag and like run down the street and say human rights for all. I've seen terrible homophobic, misogynistic, racist content coming from children as young as 12 years old. And we have no plan or strategy to combat that. We have incels in South Africa. And when you compare that to the socioeconomic crisis we're in, we are maybe not going to see the effects, you know, as early as tomorrow, but in the next few years, we are in a crisis. And social media is one of those crisis points. But my question, sorry. My question was, what happens if we don't see change from the government? Because that's, you know, the context that I organize in, that if the government doesn't do anything, what are we going to do about it? If change doesn't come, you know, what's the plan? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jordan. So I'm going to ask the panel to pick up on questions if you'd like to, but just in your closing, unfortunately we've run out of time, just with some closing comments. I mean, I was going to ask what leaves you hopeful, but hope is a drug. So no, I'm gonna still stick with it. It's just thinking about these questions, local government elections, thinking about really the beautiful contributions that have been made so personally from everyone from the audience, and thank you for sharing so powerfully. But just where are you at? What should we be taking away from this conversation? Spesh?
So when I was very young, in my activism, which I still continue, I remember in high school, I was told about the line that led people to some part of where we are, which might not be glorious and beautiful, is that the people shall govern. And I assume, and sometimes when I look at what does that mean, I interpreted that people in parliament are also people that will govern, and that's dying. For me, to think that people in parliament are the people that they were talking about when they spoke about people shall govern. I've started to realize that when they say people shall govern, in the next wave of governance, for me, right now in South Africa, is that ordinary people will take their rightful place in governing to the country that we want to build. So in my closing is that I still hold it in my activism that the people shall govern, and they're starting to look less and less like political parties and political emblems. And I'm starting to dream into what does that mean, where we can let that system do what it needs to, but what needs to govern me and my 4 streets in my community? What do we need to put together? If there's a young person who's unemployed, what is my part? And that's how I govern. So governing and government is starting to look very different for me as an activist who are now starting to chant to myself every day when I wake up that the people shall govern, and those people are not politics. And that's my hope.
Thanks, Spesh. Jess?
Yeah, just first off, I loved what everyone was sharing. Thank you guys so much for sharing. And I think these ideas is what we need. These types of conversations is what we need. But we, and if government won't create platforms for it, we need to do it ourselves. And I think that's also something is, we talk about voting as if that is our one duty as a citizen of a country, and it's not. Yes, we're voting in 2 years, but we actually vote every single day. We vote in the words that we choose to use when we're referring to each other. We vote when we buy certain products. We vote when we decide not to stand up when someone says something incredibly homophobic or whatever the case is. Voting isn't just the ballot paper. It's our decisions, it's our choices, it's what we do every single day. And if we are able to recognize that and take that responsibility, then you don't have to wait for the election. You take control of your power and you go, okay, who's the person that is the most perfectly aligned person to make a difference in my house or in my church or on my street or in my school or in my community? It's not someone sitting up here in Parliament coming in a nice fancy dress on a red carpet for something. No, it's you. You are the one who knows your community and your situation better than anyone else. And I think there's a big lie out there that tells you got to wait, or you got to be the perfect person, or you got to have a certain qualifications, or you got to be in this youth league or that or whatever. It's a lie, guys. If we want to make a difference, we can go out in our communities and try to make a difference. And if the systems are holding us back, then screw the systems. Like, let's actually just dismantle them and build ones that do work for us in our communities, ones that do reach out to the furthest point of communities with the most marginalized people and the people who, like, people talk about invisible people. There's no invisible people. People who have been pushed aside very strategically, might I add, so voices can't be heard. So make sure that you vote every single day in all of your actions, your thoughts, your words, and make it mean something. We are going to hit obstacles, but that is life, and just because there's an obstacle doesn't mean that we can't change it. And I think apartheid coming to an end was an obstacle that many people thought they couldn't bring down. That happened, and I have no doubt that the young people who were raised to be activists, I have no doubt that we can do the same. So the government's not working. Let's do something about it. And we're not just going to do something every 5 years. Let's go out there and, it sounds cheesy, but let's do what we want to be done. Let's build the country we want. Let's stop relying on other people. Let's embrace our role as the youth of this country. If we say we have incredible ideas, if we say we have all this awesomeness, let's bring it out. Let's do it. Let's not talk about what we can do, and let's show people what we've done.
Thanks, Jess. Sandile.
I think for me, I remember when I was still at UCT, the Arch came to give a lecture at a religious kind of seminar, and I attended that seminar that day. And the Arch was speaking about joy and what it meant for him as a leader to be joyful and to live in a society where there's a presence of joy. And at the time, it was quite easy to think about joy because as a student, you've got a meal, you've got res, you've got these facilities around you, and joy does look possible. And I remember reflecting on that and feeling that, okay, this is quite achievable. But as I grew older, I really kind of detached more and more from the possibility of feeling joy again, because I feel like we're in a society that doesn't make it easy to experience joy unless you do have the privileges to either access spaces or to buy things that can give you joy. So I think for me, we must think about the fact that how does joy look like for an ordinary young South African? And I think that's a question I'd like for everyone to take today, is that how do we create avenues for joy for any South African anywhere in the country? And I think for me also, I think I started earlier by saying I'm disappointed, not because I was the chief of staff for Rise Mzansi, but before that, I ran the board of directors of the Public Investment Corporation, which is a 2.6 trillion fund, and I was not even 30. And I sat in meetings with adults that constantly made me feel uncomfortable because I was young. So where I come from, I know there's many young people in this country who are constantly being manipulated, constantly being bullied because they're talented. And so again, we need to understand that as much as we want change, as much as we want, are we ready for that change? Are these systems willing to accommodate the kind of innovation that we, or even the urgency that we as young people carry? So I think we also need to understand that we are operating in a system that doesn't necessarily make it easy for an ordinary young person to flourish in. These systems are meant to give you, I mean, how many people have depression at work? How many people hate their jobs? How many people are sexually abused at work? How many people are getting jobs because they had to sleep with the manager? So all of these things are realities that we young people have to overcome, and the psychosocial impact of that isn't something that as a society we are prioritizing. I remember doing a project for my business in Mdatsane, and we basically put entrepreneurs in a room, and we're talking about, so as an entrepreneur, what do you want? Obviously, people spoke about resources. We want money so we can register, so we can start up, so we can buy this thing. But I remember a statement that even today still holds very strong with me. Someone stood up and said, as a young black entrepreneur, I'm tired of being trained. I'm tired of just training. At what point do I get psychosocial or psychological relief from all this idea that I'm limited, and actually start to participate in a mainstream environment where everything for me becomes possible? So I think for me, the urgency, and I think this course is important because courage is a spiritual act. Courage is something all of us can enable in each other. And I think a course like this can allow us to fundamentally reflect on the kind of joys that within our own communities, within our own environments, how do we let other people experience joy? What do we do on a daily basis that makes us take actions that enable joy, as opposed to limit other people's potentialities of experiencing, ultimately, can South Africans be happy? It's quite a big question as well, and I think this course can lead us there.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Inam, last words.
Yeah, last words. Yeah, guys, I was very excited, and then no, I'm still. Hope is a drug, but I like the drug. Give me more of that drug. Why? Because I feel we needed to wake up every day. I feel like a hopeless society is a society that is dead. I think the only way we can wake up each day as individuals, but as, people that are active citizens. People wake up first thing in the morning to go stand in street corners so that they can feed their children. They are hopeful that someone will contribute to their life so that they can take the money back home and put food on the table, even if the government is failing. I'm a person that really doesn't believe that the government is this big savior that's meant to save all of us. Each and every one of us have to take agency. We need to do what we can with what we have as individuals. Whether you are staying in Constantia or Khayelitsha, you have agency. You have your values. You have things that you yourself can do and contribute to your household and the society around you. You don't have to look at it as a bigger picture of what am I doing to the world, for the world. But you can look at what can I do today that I can make this world a better place just for my neighbor, just for myself, just for my mother, my father, my cousin, my brother that I'm convincing to go vote. You know, we all have that little bit of agency, and that's what makes us great humans. Humans, I feel like we're nice people. We're good people with good intentions. Not all of us immediately. But we start off good. We get too much money, then. But I think there's hope in the society, and it might not look like the Rainbow Nation. Maybe we need a different symbol, because, I mean, the rainbow symbol has been overused. But when it comes to communication and having these important conversations, what I think is important is we don't stray to what our intentions are. We all have an end goal, is to live a beautiful life, for that beautiful tomorrow. And the people that fought during apartheid, they didn't want it yesterday, like, you know, tomorrow. They knew that tomorrow is not necessarily theirs that they're gonna experience, but for future generations. So it's up to us to remain hopeful, but also take action each and every day. It's very important. And I think the action is way more urgent than necessary, because, you know, the world is collapsing and AI is taking over. But that's not the point. Like, we need to take action in any possible way that each and every one of us as individuals can. And I feel like just because there is a glimmer, that's a glimmer of hope that, you know, you sitting here in your own way, you can make a difference. And it can be something as simple as giving someone 5 rand, or, you know, offering to take care of someone's child, you know, telling people, you know, whatever, brightening someone's day. There's different ways to contribute. And it's not necessarily conversations that are happening on social media, but people are very lonely. They are very lonely. The youth is very lonely. That's why they spend a lot of time on social media. Sometimes they don't have people to speak to, and they use those platforms to communicate with others. I don't think those platforms need to necessarily be wiped out, but there's ways in which we can manage them efficiently to have real conversations like we're having now. People that are on, you know, on different media platforms right now can hear this conversation, and it can spark something that can make them change their situation or create change in their communities. So I think, yeah, let's pass that little hope drug around, and let's all get high off of it.
Thank you so much to the panel and to you, wonderful audience. I'm feeling very full and inspired. I loved what the arch said, not just a facile optimism, but a deep, grounded, gritty kind of hope. So thank you all for your contributions. I'll hand over to you, Jakob, to close us off.
I looked at everybody's shoes when they were talking. And I look at Sandile's shoes. As you can see, he's been in rural KZN. Yeah. But please, let's not talk anymore. Please take your free copy of this beautiful book at the back, and there's some food and drink there. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for being there. Go and make the change you want to be. Go and be the change you want to make.